Welcome back to Spirits and Stories with Donald Dunn. Today's guests are the hosts of Creepy Coffees, Eddie and Don Ravenscar. They don't just talk about the paranormal, they live it, brew it, and bring it to the mic with passion and personality. From haunted locations, true crime mysteries, to eerie folklore, all served with a fresh cup of coffee, they've built a one-of-a-kind show that blends dark history, paranormal investigations, psychology, and storytelling. You've heard the legends, now let's hear the stories behind them. Let's dive into the strange, spooky, and mysterious world of Creepy Coffees.
Hey, how's it going, Eddie? Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, I've been excited about this. So
Go ahead.
I actually went through some of your podcasts, man, and listened to them, and then I hit the subscribe and I rang the bell and the whole
Awesome.
9 yards, man. So I liked it.
I appreciate it. We're starting, it started out a totally different platform and it's just kind of developing into its own organic thing. And
Yep.
we've blown up overnight and we're global and we're having a blast and we're just putting our hands up like on a roller coaster and saying, let's do this, and off
Yep.
we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Podcasting for me turned out it was my version of therapy, and
Sure.
man, it just, like you said, it took a life of its own, and it's grown from there. And I think that's the best way,
Yeah.
because it is fun. It's not a job or some place that you got to go that you just can't stand.
Right. When
And you
when we
definitely won't get
started,
rich.
yeah, when we started it, Dawn and I, unfortunately, she can't be here. She had an appointment today. But when her and I started it, I flat out told her, I says, I don't care if anybody but us listens to this.
Yeah,
You know, I it's fun. Every time we would go to a coffee place, we would talk about ghosts, and every mom and pop coffee shop has a ghost story.
yeah.
And that's kind of where it started. And I started handing out stickers and this hat, and Dawn would wear her hat, and people started asking, what the heck is creepy coffees? What are you doing? Something to somebody's coffee? Or and then they would hear the story about him, like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then the next thing you know, boom, here we are. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I believe this is your latest podcast, the Girl Scout murders, right?
Correct.
So I listened to that today, and I'd never heard this story before. So
Right.
it was new to me, and I made some notes on here. I kind of want to dig into and ask some questions. The the two bodies that they found, the two
Uh-huh.
girls, were still in a sleeping bag, huh?
Yeah, that's what the story says. I've done all sorts of research on it. That and Dawn, she's my little, you know, my gopher when it comes to fact checking, my factotum,
Yep.
that if she hears something, she's right away checking it. And if I get it wrong, boy, she's first to jump on me. So if it's on there at 99%, it's accurate because Dawn fact checked it for me. And, I did a lot of research on it and I had never heard of this story either. I stumbled across it when I was doing another story, the Visalia axe murders. I don't know
Mhm.
if you'd seen that one yet.
Not yet.
And I just happened to stumble across this one and I'm like, "Oh my God, how did I never hear of this?" Type of thing. And
Yep.
so I started diving into it like I do everything else. And next thing I know, I was obsessed with it. I had to know more. I had to
Yep.
know more. And it's not to glorify it by any means, but it's a great story.
It is.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
It will leave you with a ton of questions. I mean, I found myself not even thinking like I was preparing for an interview. I found myself acting like I was the investigator. Some of the notes I made on here was Gene Hart, the suspect, was um, how could that? How did he even fit into that? Because it drives me crazy because I hear his background was he's a criminal. He
Right,
escaped from prison, and he raped two women that were pregnant, right?
right. And then
And
killed them.
right, and then they say it was him that did it, but it drives the question. Most of the time rapists have a type that they target,
Yeah, an
or
agenda.
yeah, and they don't. It's I don't see them going from being a woman raper to a child raper. It was just kind of crazy, and you would think that the person that gave away the flashlight could have identified whether that was him that he gave the flashlight to,
Right. And
or
then it brings up the question, like I said, why would you give somebody who has no business on an all girls campground a flashlight?
yeah,
It, the whole thing, when you try to put it together, it doesn't fit. It really doesn't. And even to this day, you and I talking about it, it still brings up questions. How could
yeah,
this have happened?
yeah,
I get the time period, and I've mentioned that several times during the podcast. In the 70s, we're both a little older, so life was totally different, and I
yeah,
get that. We were complacent with things, but as complacent as we and our parents and our grandparents were, we weren't idiots,
yeah,
and if something doesn't fit, but yeah, no, it's a phenomenal story. Then it's yeah, I'm still, Dawn and I are talking about it. We've got a couple on our website where we're going over the next 6 months, and we've got like tons of travel we're doing, and both in country and out of Conus and the whole nine yards. And I told her, I says, we got to go there.
yeah,
I got to do an investigation in there. I mean, it's because nobody has been there since the day that those little girls were found.
really,
Yeah, well, I mean, interested people or nosy people have been there,
okay,
but
yeah, yeah,
as for anything productive or anything happening, the day those babies, excuse me, the bodies were found of those little girls was the last day, because they evacuated everybody, and it was the last day they were in business. And what's really odd to me too is it's the Girl Scouts of America, which is a huge organization,
yeah.
and you heard nothing about it.
And that's also kind of the annual campouts and stuff like that. It's usually the parents are usually present, or a parent usually goes, similar to like the Boy Scouts whenever we went camping.
Yeah,
You had your den that was there, but you also, most of the time, the parents or multiple parents
sure.
were there. So it wasn't like they were just dropped off at the doors of a camp, and there
And
wasn't
left to
some sort of
wander. Yeah.
yeah.
And see, that brings up another part, like I had brought up in the podcast, was their tent was way on the other side, away from, the chaperones, on the other side of the showers. And they weren't even in plain sight. And then
Yeah,
you're going to tell me you're going to take 3 10-year-old girls and put them out there in the middle of a thunderstorm and not even go check on them.
yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. It's
Acid.
I yeah, it's crazy, and it's fascinating. It really, and again, I'm not trying to glorify what happened, and I have nothing
Right.
but respect and polite for those who lost, but it's an amazing story. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the person that narrated that story ended up being the fourth girl that got sick and
Yeah,
and wasn't able to attend. I mean,
yeah.
how do you narrate that? Like, whoo, man, angels on my shoulder.
Right? Either that or survivor guilt or something,
Yeah,
because, when you're 10 years old and you're supposed to be going to this big thing, I don't know about you, but when I was 10 years old, I'm again older, so things were different. I would be excited. I would be just like jumping through the roof. And then if I couldn't go, I would be so disappointed and so upset.
yeah,
But if I, role reversal, if I was in that situation, I don't know. I mean, would I have been happy I wasn't there? Or
yeah,
do I, that what if is always in your head, and it's pretty amazing to think about the one survivor who was supposed to be there that wasn't there, who's now a successful actress and in the public eye. And
yep.
again, we go back to the whole thing doesn't make much sense at all.
No, no, absolutely. And I don't know that. the DNA testing and everything will get, how much better it will get in the future. But they've made multiple attempts to.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I heard you guys say in there was that the local sheriff department was taking up donations to pay for um,
More
the
DNA testing.
more DNA testing. Is that not something that they do? Is occasionally go back and relook at cold cases?
From what I understand in the research I've done, the smaller departments, and I'm assuming that was a small department at the time, and probably now too, that they just be, well, funds everywhere across the board are scraped. So
Yep.
they really don't have the funds to do that. And as technologically as advanced as everything is now, so is the cost of it.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and something that's 40 years old, sadly, it's going to take a back seat to something that happened 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And, unless you have somebody that's going to write the check for it, and follow through, which fortunately they have, that, it just kind of guy, I would imagine gets lost,
Yeah.
somewhere along the way. Just that old adage, the piece of paper on the beach, the sand eventually blows over it and it's gone.
Yep. Yeah, you are right, and it is unfortunate because of the children that it affected. But yeah, man, it was a great episode. My hats
Thank
off
you.
to you guys. I loved it. I was definitely in tune. So
Thank you.
uh, I seen you guys did another one on something that I, being an older person, was kind of passionate about as a child, and that was the ghost stories about the poltergeist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. That was my jam. I liked that show when I was a kid. It
Yeah.
scared the crap out of me.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's funny because when I did that episode, I watched the movie 2 or 3 times again, and it still holds up to this day.
Yeah.
And to find out all that crap happened behind the scenes, it opened up a bigger door for me because now I've also got the one for the Omen. Have you listened to that one yet?
Not yet.
You need to listen to that one because there's some coincidences in there that are just, how did that happen? And then there's also the movies that's out now, The Conjuring.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of crazy stuff that we're finding out about that we're probably going to do another episode on too. So, Poltergeist just opened that door for us with,
Yeah.
and that was honestly the episode that took off. Was, because the other, I think the first 2 or 3, we were just kind of trying to find our way, and how is this going to work and what do we do and blah, blah, yada, yada, which microphone and the whole 9 yards. And then we did Poltergeist and it's like everything just fell into place. And we just haven't looked back since.
Yeah. I mean, I heard of the stories about how it was haunted and everything, but I never did no research about it. And I thought it was fascinating that you guys said that they used real skeletons because they were cheaper than plastic ones.
Right?
That is insane to me.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's one of the things that I double and triple checked. I mean, I even called Paramount to see because I used to have connections back in the day because I was in the music industry. And I called to verify all this. And they were telling me, like, back in the day, back in the early 80s, it was, they just want to get rid of them. So, yeah, the old medical schools, they've used their cadavers as much as they can. They just want to get rid of them. So it's like, sure, you want to give me $20, I'll take it. Where the regular skeleton would cost 1,000 some dollars each. A real body would cost you $50 and a 6 pack of beer.
Yeah, it is crazy. I just picture Walmart with rollback prices. Here's, here's Jeffrey.
That's Sorry, no returns.
Yeah, it's insane, man. Some of the stuff that and then they didn't even tell. I can't even
Yeah.
imagine the lawsuits that would have happened from that movie in
Oh,
today's era.
yeah.
The actors
Today,
didn't even know they were real bodies.
yeah, today. Oh my God. I honestly, I don't even know if Poltergeist could have been made today.
Hell
You
no.
you know, it's I love it, go to the light, this house is clean, it just yeah, okay, you go. Yeah, so it's it's crazy, a lot of things that, we're finding out because of all this, you know, knock on wood, I've been lucky enough that this has opened up doors and communications into Hollywood and to other mysteries. And we've got so many people inviting us out to come stay with them and go ghost hunting at their house and the whole house. And it's awesome. It really is. But what's really cool are stuff like this where I've never heard the story, and people are calling me and saying, "Hey, do you know about this?" And that's how I found out about the Girl Scouts, in Visalia. And I'm like, "Oh my God, no!" And it's amazing how the doors have opened up for us, and I'm loving it.
Yeah,
That, and you mix a good cup of coffee,
there
you
you go.
can't get it wrong.
Yeah. And and being a veteran yourself, I'm sure you remember how great the field coffee was from the military.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Grab a fork and a knife and get a cup of coffee, and off you go.
Yep, yep, absolutely. So, if you had to pick your favorite investigation or research that you've done, what story is your absolute favorite?
Well, I have two. One is what really got me involved in this. And this was way back when I was a teenager. And then another one a couple years ago before I actually started to do any recording or whatever. I was back in Ohio. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. And I was back in Ohio and hanging out with some friends and everything. And it was right about the time when I happily got divorced. And so I really had not a lot to do. So a friend of mine says, "Hey, let's go down to Mansfield." And I'm like, "Well, what the hell are we going to do in Mansfield? There's nothing there." He goes, "Oh, no, no, no. They have ghost tours overnight at Mansfield State Prison." And I didn't think about it, but Mansfield State Prison was where the movie Shawshank Redemption was filmed, Tango and Cash was filmed, all this. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And then I thought back and I had an uncle that was in Mansfield. So what the hell? Let's go. It was built in 1870 and they used it for war prisoners and stuff like that at first. And then they reconverted it to a regular prison and it was open until like 1992 or 93 or something like that. So it's got a long history of
Mhm.
pain, murder, and death. And I tell you what, the minute they said, "Okay, you guys are on your own," and it got dark, it got creepy quick.
Oh,
I
I bet.
mean, yeah, we're in the cell blocks and we're just sitting. There's this one cell block that it's long and it's like three tiers, and on each tier there's 50 cells that are the doors are wide open, and so you're looking at what 50 150 cells that are open, and we're sitting down at the bottom and we can go up if we want, and we're sitting there, and within 2 to 3 minutes of us sitting there being quiet you start hearing doors slam and things like, "Ooh, help, don't go away." And we're looking at each other and we're thinking, because we didn't drink anything, and we didn't do anything else. And so it really opened my eyes to, I had things happen before in the past, and I just, wrote it off as coincidence or whatever and whatnot. But man, when you're sitting there for 4 hours in the dark and you're seeing shit walk in front of you and doors slamming and, like a little tap on your shoulder and "Get out," come, you kind of tend to believe it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've had some kind of unexplained things that has happened to me throughout my life. And I only there's only two that I can think of and say, yeah, that had to be something. And
Yeah.
one of them was before my dad passed away. Me and my wife was in bed, and we were sleeping at their house downstairs, and all of a sudden the bed just started like moving, and
Hmm.
it woke me and her up, and I looked at her, She looked at me. I said, "Yeah, we're gonna go upstairs." So we went upstairs and slept. And in that same house, after my dad passed, before was buried, I was walking past the door, and man, I seen my dad looking in the window of the door.
I believe you.
It was him. I
Yeah.
have no doubts in my mind it was him.
Yeah. No,
And
I totally believe you.
yeah, and so I do believe that there is something else out there. Whether it just be forms of energy or dimensions,
Sure.
or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, there is definitely something going on.
Oh, totally. I mean, we can't go through everything we've gone through in all these years just for it to stop.
Right.
There's got to be some, whether you're religious or, whatever the case may be, there's something after there's got to be.
Yeah.
And, one thing that I found is there's everywhere you look, there's paranormal activity. We just don't see it or hear it because we're not looking for it.
Right.
If either one of us went to a graveyard right now, excuse me, even though it's the middle of the day, and we sat down and we kept our mouths quiet and our ears and eyes open, would hear shit, and would see things. We may not know what we're seeing and hearing, but it's
Right.
there. There's stories. We went to Milwaukee about 2 weeks ago and went to Shaker's Cigar Bar, which was once owned by Al Capone.
Oh, okay.
And this place is totally haunted. It's so haunted that down in the basement, there's a big concrete slab where there's still two bodies buried in it. And that's part of the ghost hunt. Yeah. So
Jimmy Hoffa.
yeah, yeah, right. It's crazy, and we were out there and we did that, and so many things happened to us that night. I have a video of Dawn, her and I, before we even went in on the ghost tour, we're standing there and we took a selfie. Well, I have an iPhone, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but on an iPhone, on a still picture, you can hold the picture and you get about 6 seconds of
Yep.
video on it.
Yep.
So on this picture, without touching it, she had two white dots on her chin. And me being a man and kind of perverted, I was making fun of her, and everything. And she's getting all mad and she's looking at the picture and she holds it. And her eyes got real big. She's, "Oh my God, Eddie, look at this." And I'm like, "What?" And I look, and you could see in that 6 seconds, those two dots move up and down her face with some green mist, like an entity, like those were two eyes. And you can see the form of a face around her. And it just, look, I'm getting goosebumps. And it freaked her out. It was
Oh yeah.
just, I mean, and it stuff like that doesn't bother me. I'm like, yeah, bring it.
Yeah.
But we were talking about it earlier today. She's my comic relief because when things go crazy, she freaks out and I start laughing.
Yeah.
So, but we've got it on video, and I should have sent it to you. I didn't even think about it. You could have taken a look at it. I apologize.
That's all
But
right.
maybe next time,
Yep.
and then at Shakers also, was Jeffrey Dahmer. That was one of his hangouts, and they've got the actual chair that he used to sit on at the bed at the bar and everything. And it's if you get a chance, go on our website and look at things going on. And there's a whole thing with pictures about Shaker's Cigar Bar in Milwaukee and everything. And it's just absolutely was an amazing trip. Plus, they have good pizza. So
I love pizza too.
yeah, yeah. That and coffee. Gotta have the coffee. But it was so phenomenal. Our leader, Jennifer, she was just a riot. She was so much fun and she was so knowledgeable. And she let us go ahead and just do things. We had little dividing rods and stuff like that
Mhm.
you talk. And nobody wants to talk to me because I want them to. I'm like, well, I'm going to ask questions. Hello, blah, blah, blah. And every now and then I'll get a response. But I'd be holding them and I'm like, okay, if you don't want to talk to me, who do you want to talk to? They would always turn to Dawn because they know she doesn't want to be bothered. She doesn't want to be touched. And so,
Yeah.
man, it was great. They were all over her ass.
I'm sure she appreciated it too.
See, I could say that now because she's not home. But when she sees this, then I'll have to pay for it. But
Yep.
it that's one of the things that I really think it's great between her and I, because as interested as she is in everything and involved, she doesn't want the interaction. Where
Right.
me, I show me yourself. If you're not demonic, show me yourself. Show me what you got. And they don't want to do nothing to me because they know it's not going to phase me. But man, they'll go up and they'll pull her hair and they'll pull her ears and grab her by the leg. And oh, it's just hilarious. I've got some pictures of her where she's been grabbed. She's like, it's just good times.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a buddy of mine that he's on our board for our radio station, and he is really big into the paranormal.
Hmm.
Um, he invited me up to Gettysburg.
Oh, that's a big spot.
Yeah, and there's a big event that's going on up there in uh, July, I think it is. And so he invited me up there. He was asked to be a guest speaker. So we're gonna go up there. It'll be my first time ever actually going ghost hunting.
Wow. If Gettysburg is a huge hot spot because of the Civil War and
Yeah.
everything. I can't remember the name of it. It's one of the forts that are up there, and they still have like 24 encasements where ammunition and stuff were at, and they put bodies in there. And man, that place is so off the charts haunted. It's if you're gonna go see something, you're definitely gonna see it there. I totally wish I was going with you. That's one of the things Dawn and I were talking about. We're gonna go do North and South Carolina, and then
Mhm.
I was talking with a young man from Auburn, Alabama, I think is what he said it was.
Mhm.
And I did some research on that, and that place is like haunted as crazy too. So yeah, we've got a busy 6 months coming up, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I would be too. You know, if you could get an answer to one question from a spirit or whatever it is, what would you want the answers to?
Wow. Honestly, yowza. I hate to go back on this one, but who shot JFK? I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many other questions that you've got a logical explanation for, but I've watched all those on A&E where
Yeah.
declassified this and UFO that and whatnot, and the JFK thing is the one that keeps there's no definitive. And you watch all the evidence, even what was it, Scorsese or whatever who made that movie back
Hmm.
in the day, it still left open questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I myself personally, I think there's no possible way that that little knucklehead could have been up that high. And you're in the military, and to get off those shots that precise with that type of rifle, I
Impossible.
yeah, I don't I it's impossible. Granted, he may have been there and been part, the scapegoat, but I think it's so much deeper, whether it's
It's
the
mob related, man.
yeah, mob related, the Cuban connection because of Bay of Pigs,
Yep.
and the whole there's just so many variables and what ifs that I would like to know that, and I would like to know if Hitler really did commit suicide when they say, because that's another of the big questions, that
Yeah.
are going around. Was he alive and did he make it to Argentina? So, just out of
Yeah.
curiosity, I would like to know those.
Yeah. Absolutely. I had a medium on my show last season, and a lot of times when I have somebody like that on there, I take what they say as a grain of salt.
Sure.
But for some reason, man, she really stuck with me. Even to this day, I think about that interview and some of the stuff that she said, about what heaven looks like and how it's not what we picture. It's not a golden gate with, harps and angels.
Right.
She said it's more like, from what she has seen, it's just got different dimensions. There's different levels of heaven. And
Right.
she's,
What's interesting about that is my aunt, well, I was adopted by my aunt, and she was much older when she adopted me and everything. So just she recently passed away. But before she passed away, at I think she was like 94 when she passed,
Mhm.
her older brother, my uncle or great uncle, would lived in the house with us, and he passed away when I was like 16 years old. So him and I never really got to know each other, but we did because I was the rebellious big mouth teen, and I thought I knew everything. So, and
Yeah.
funny is, I didn't, but anyway, so they were really close. And after my uncle passed, she would, I guess, dream, have her dreams with him in it and everything. And we never talked about it till I was in the military, when I started to see different things and have to do things. Is that a Bengals chair?
It is.
Hooday!
Yep. I,
Yeah.
I've got an autographed jersey in my front room of Ken Anderson,
Nice.
and then I got a Joe Burrow jersey next to it. I still got to put up. I got Jeff Blake and Carson Palmer's jersey. I still got to put them up. But yeah,
Nice.
I've been a Bengals fan since the '70s. So
I'm from Cleveland and I'm a Bengals fan.
well, it's much better than being a Browns fan.
Right? Thank you. Thank you. But that's a topic for another show. Yeah.
Yep,
So,
absolutely,
so
man.
yeah. So anyway, back to my story. Um, when I got out of the military and everything, she would tell me, different things because of experiences that I had overseas and everything. And she said that right before she passed, she was concerned because she dreamt of my Uncle Joe. And he had told her that, just like you said, heaven's not what you think it is. It's not bad, but it's not what you think it is.
Right.
And she told me that she asked, well, where's my sisters and everything at? And he said, oh, they're over there somewhere. So that breaks into the dimensions that you're talking about.
Yep.
And it's weird that you would say that, because that stuck in my mind. And every time I would talk to her after that, did you have any more dreams? What were they? Type of thing like that. Because I grew up, they were very religious and just off the boat from Poland. So they were strict, devout Polish Catholics and, excuse me, the whole 9 yards, which God bless them. They did the best they could with what they had, me.
Yeah.
So, so everything I was taught in school is not correct according to what she's saying and what your medium said and what I'm finding out. It's just,
Yeah.
so where does the faith come in? Where does it's mind-boggling, but I still want to know who shot JFK. So,
Yeah. Well, I kind of picture it like I like computers, and
mhm,
um, so I kind of relate it to this. You have the complicated system with
sure.
a really good user interface, and to me, I think that's where religion comes in. Is it's the explainable version for the user to use,
It makes
because
sense.
everything else behind it that makes all this stuff happen
Mhm.
is a lot more confusing.
Sure. As long as it doesn't look like Tron, the movie Tron,
Yeah.
then I'm okay with that, But
Yep.
but you know what bothers me, and not to get off on the religious thing or anything like that,
Hmm.
is we spend our lives trying to do good and making ourselves and people around us better. All right. So don't we deserve something better than the people that, we'll just say was involved in the Girl Scout murders?
Yeah.
Does that person deserve the same thing we do? And I kind of take that on every hunt too, especially when we do things that are horrific like that, or have a lot of trauma involved and stuff. It's like, I understand why the entity's still there, because they want their story heard and they're not happy and they're not resting easy. But what about the person that did that? What, where, do we get revenge on them in that dimension? Or
Right.
it's, if you sit down and think about it, you could drink a whole pot of coffee and go nuts, you
Oh yeah.
know?
It's a deep rabbit hole, And
Yeah.
she actually commented one I had on my show. She commented on that exact topic. She said that when she's had people come in, she said I can't even count how many wanted to talk to the person that molested them.
Right.
And
That's
she said,
freaky.
yeah, she said they're there, and she said it's not complicated. If you were a dick here, you're a dick there, and that's
Really.
exactly what she said.
Well,
She said it
that's
doesn't
that's
change.
good way to know. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm gonna take that to heart. So I mean, if you're a shit here, you're a shit there.
yeah.
So
That's
well,
and that's exactly what she said. She said she's had murderers. She said, don't get it wrong. She said there is a hell. She
uh-huh.
said, but I have no idea what you got to do to get there. So,
Okay. Well, hopefully I can never answer that question.
but I think murder and molestations got me beat. If they're there, I'm probably in.
Yeah, I think I'm safe. Yeah, absolutely. I'll go as far as saying that I don't even touch a Ouija board.
Yeah.
What's funny is when my sister and I were growing up at my aunt's house, they went out and bought one for us, but we were
Hmm.
never allowed to play with it. So we got still the Ouija board in the box, and it sat in the closet for 30 some years. I don't know where it's at now, but we never got to play the damn Ouija board. So
Yeah.
I,
I actually did do one when I was a kid.
mhm.
In that same house I told you about with my wife, and it was. I don't know if my buddy had it planned or if he knew, but we had the TV on, and
Right.
we were messing around with the Ouija board, and of course it was moving. Again, I don't know who was moving it, and my buddy goes, "If this is Satan that we were talking to, then give us a sign." And all of a sudden, right at that time, I mean, he finished the sentence and the TV went black, and I was
Sure.
like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
It
What did
turned
you
out
do?
it was just the station going off the network. That was back when not every channel was 24 hours.
That's yeah. I I've seen too many things and too many crazy things with Ouija boards that that's bad juju, man. I don't, that's one thing Dawn and I said that we were never going to do when we started to do paranormal stuff is we don't want to deal with demons
Yeah.
and satanic stuff and eh, I don't want to. I've been involved indirectly on doors not shutting all the way and I
Hmm.
I don't want any of that, that's
Yeah.
Eh, whether it's
I don't blame
true
you.
or not true, I don't know, but I don't want no demons in my house. We've had entities follow us home and
Really?
play little tricks. Oh yeah, there's I think it's episode 2 where we did a foot tour here in Flagstaff and we went by what was the Weatherford Hotel, which was there from the early 1900s and so on with the cowboys and all that crap. And there was a little boy there who died and I can't remember the circumstances of his death, but he
Hmm.
hangs out in the basement and his name was Algeron. And when we went on the tour guide was telling us all about that. And for whatever reason, I was obsessed with this little boy, Algeron. I wanted to know everything about him. I wanted to know what happened to him. I wanted to know about his parents. And I could find absolutely nothing on him, And so we're walking around on the tour, and every stop, I'm like, dude, what's that kid's name again? And he'd go Algeron. And I'm like, okay, okay. And I could not say it. I was thinking Alderon, like from Star Wars,
Yep.
and it's like, no, Algeron. So the story goes on through the whole 2 hours. I can't remember his name. So we leave and, we're on our way home. And Dawn's like, man, I don't feel really good at all. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, my stomach's kind of upset and I'm just not feeling normal. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. You always complain about something. So we get home. And what I've done here, because the house we live in is haunted, and
Hmm.
I can prove that, I've got video and the whole 9 yards to prove it. But we've got these little cat toys, the little cat balls
Hmm.
that light up with movement and they're used for ghost hunting. So I've got them set up around the house just in case the ghosts want to play. They can hit the light, and they do. We'll be watching TV and we'll see the little lights go off and, you know, stuff like that. So anyway, We get back home, and as she's walking through the house to the bedroom, in our bedroom we have our own bathroom, she's
Hmm.
starting to get real violently ill. Her stomach is killing her, and the TV won't go on because I always turn the TV on in the bedroom and it wouldn't go on. I'm like, what the hell? So then there were three cat balls in our room that started flashing and going crazy. No matter what, I kept saying like, okay, who's in here? Turn the TV on, turn the light, whatever you want to do it. And they were going crazy. And Dawn come out, she lays down next to me and she's like, my stomach is killing me. I don't get it. I'm like, okay, Algeron, or however you say your name, I meant no disrespect. I'm just curious about you and what happened to you. And I apologize if anything offended you or upset you. And the minute I said that, the lights stopped, the TV went on, and Dawn goes, oh my God, I feel so much better.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I, how do you argue with that? I
No,
mean,
you can't.
yeah. I mean, it's so, we've got a REM pod here in the house too that I play with all the time because I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it,
Mhm.
and when she's not here, like if we weren't talking right now, I'd probably have the REM pod sitting out on my desk, and if it would go off, I would ask questions and it'd go off and on, and a door would shut or whatnot. And the other night I did an interview with Book 101. And as I'm sitting here talking, we're getting ready to move because we're going to downsize. But if you see in the back, the door is open right now.
Mhm.
When I was doing the interview that night, the door was completely shut and locked because Dawn wasn't in here. She was packing, and we've got three dogs, so they couldn't come in here. Well, as we're talking, and I'm almost positive I was telling the story about Algeron, the door opened on its own. And then about 3 or 4 seconds later, the door shut on its own. So, I mean, you can go look at it. It's right there on video. And, people can say what they want to say. I'm fine with that. If you're not a believer, great. We can still drink some coffee, you
Yep.
know, but I'm telling you, there's just too many things. As soon as you realize and open up that there's more going on around us than we know, you'll be surprised at what you see and hear.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer there's only two kinds of people. There's those that believe, and then there's the deniers.
That-
Because there's definitely been way too many things that have happened that you just cannot deny it.
oh, absolutely. Whatever you want. It's it's and people all the time. Well, really fun. When when they hear from
I think I think you froze a little bit, man. You there? I think the
see,
ghost.
there we
Ah,
go.
yep,
You
I can hear
know, it's I wouldn't doubt it for a second. This is not the first time it's happened when I've done interviews
you.
and
Hmm.
I've talked about ghosts in this house or even Algeron. Excuse me. The video or well, look at the sound went out earlier.
Yeah,
So is it a coincidence? I don't know. I mean, there's some freaky stuff that happens.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a situation right now that I can't explain, and it's just weird.
Oh,
So
do tell.
I I lived with my mom, so I closed my trucking company and moved back to Missouri to take care of my mom.
Okay.
She passed away April 5th, and
Sorry for your loss.
thank you. And since then, my dog will not get on the couch that she used to lay on or sit on. She will not do it. I can't even force her to do it.
Did your
And
mom pass away in the house?
she did. Yep.
She's
And
still there, buddy.
oh, I think so too. I have not seen anything that says okay, absolutely, but I have caught things moving from my peripheral vision, and
Sure.
I just cannot I can't figure out exactly what it was. Right. I just by the time I looked and turned my head, it's gone. But
Yeah.
but I can't explain the dog. And here's the weird part. If if I say get on the couch, or I just say the word couch, my dog's trained to do that. So when people knock on the door, I can say get on the couch, and she'll get on the couch instead of me having to fight
Right.
to get in between her and everything else. I mean, you heard her bark a few minutes ago. She's a pretty good sized dog,
Hmm.
but I can't even if I say get on the couch, she gets on one of the other couches. She will not get on that one, even with me sitting on it.
Wow. You should get an EMF and a little EMF meter. Go on eBay. I think they're like $6.
Okay,
And when that happens, just go by there and see if you get any readings. I bet you she's still there.
I
You
bet
know,
so. Yeah,
especially if she spent a lot of time there before she passed on that couch.
yep.
She's still there. I mean, that's take some video and send it to me. I may be coming to Missouri here to do an investigation.
Absolutely, y'all are more than welcome anytime, man.
Thanks, that'd be a blast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's just like those are the things that you just can't explain. You know,
Right.
um, and
And
it's
that's honestly what keeps me kind of coming back too, is because I really don't want an explanation. I mean,
yeah,
I do because I'm a scientific person, and I, you know, science, and if he can scientifically prove it wrong, blah blah blah. But these are things that science can't prove or disprove, and I don't think I really want them to. It does
yeah,
make things more interesting, and I never feel alone anymore. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing, but it's comforting for me to know that there are people that were close to me
hmm
that excuse me, are still there in a way. I
yeah,
may never get to talk to them, but it's like for instance, when we were in Milwaukee, Dawn had lost a nephew years and years ago when he was, I think, 7 or 8. He was hit by a police car and passed away. Well, when we were there, things would start to happen. And when we had the divining rods,
hmm
she started asking questions that only her and that little boy would know. And they were coming up to that it was that little boy. So she believes that that was the spirit of him. And look, I'm
yeah.
getting ghost bumps. And who's to say it's not? It's if that's what you believe, fantastic.
Well, there. I just thought there's another story, right? And this has happened to too many people in the
Sure.
world for it to not be something, right? How many times did somebody pass away, and that moment that they died, a thought about them went through your mind?
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely. I
I
know
was,
for a fact that happened to me.
yeah, it's happened to a lot of people. So I was in Qatar, and I
Hmm.
was flying to Afghanistan, and I was in a C-130 crap flight.
Right.
I, yep, you know, and out of the blue, it was just so weird. I had this thought that said, "Hey, I should reach out and talk to Bob," which was my mom's boyfriend after my dad passed away.
Hmm.
And I hadn't spoke to him, and I hadn't thought of him in like 5 years,
Sure.
right? And so when I landed, I did what I normally always do. I called the wife and let her know I made it safely and I'm there. And she said, "Have you spoke to your mom yet?" I said, "No." And she said, "Well," she said, "Bob passed away this evening." And I was like, "Oh, that's weird."
Yeah, that coincidence? I don't know,
Yeah, me neither,
but
man.
yeah. No, it happens. I know when my aunt that raised me passed away, I went to see her to say goodbye.
Hmm
And the day after I left, my sister left as well because she didn't want us there. After we said goodbye that night, she passed away. Well, when she passed away, I was in Oklahoma driving back at the time, I think, or someplace. I may have been in Missouri. It was either Missouri or Oklahoma. I don't remember. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, a big bolt of lightning in the sky. And, I'm thinking, like, well, shit, this is crazy. And then about 10, 15 minutes later, I got a phone call saying, yeah, she passed away, and she went peacefully and quietly. And I'm thinking, like, well, that was because we used to everybody called my aunt the sergeant, because
Hmm.
she was just little, about 5'1", but nobody messed with her. She was that little Pollock with Spitfire and whole 9 yards, and it just wouldn't surprise me at all if that was her.
Oh, this camera, man.
That's okay. I could still hear you.
Yeah, it's gonna make me leave and come back in. Well, we're almost to the end, anyways.
Sure.
Um, if you don't mind, why don't you go ahead and take a moment and tell everybody I've had your Facebook and your website up here going, but give anybody some ats that you want them to follow.
Give them some love. Okay. Well, I do want to thank you most of all, Donald, for having us on here. It's been a pleasure and an honor to know you. And I would hopefully that we'll continue to maintain this type of rapport and share stories and whatnot. But I do
Absolutely.
want to let everybody know that we are available online at creepycoffees.com. That's COFFES, not just coffee, coffees.com. And we're available there. We're available on Instagram, facial book, the whole 9 yards, and everything is at creepycoffees.com. Our email address is contact@creepycoffees.com. So that's pretty simple. You can access all of our podcasts and everything directly from our website. We're available to stream on every platform that you can imagine. Keep looking for us. Check out our website on our goings on. We have all kinds of things coming up in the next 6 months. We're going to Ireland. We're going to Paris. We're going to Seattle, to Portland, down to Alabama. So we've got a lot of things coming on in the next 6 months. If you're close, come on by, say hi. We'll give you some free swag and hang out with us. And let's go find some ghosts and let's stay creepy and drink some good coffee.
Absolutely, man. And Ireland's on my bucket list, man. So you guys have a great time while you're over there because I would love to be there.
Absolutely. Well, I'll make sure I get some good video for you.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm going to throw the outro out. And if you give me a few minutes, I'll be right with you.
All right. Thank you so much again, and stay creepy, everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, y'all, for listening, man. If you like what you see, make sure you like, share, and show. Right. Yeah. I've been having this issue with my camera.
It's the ghosts.
Yeah, man. Why is it?